You ever watch a movie as a kid, think it's amazing, then rewatch it years later and realize, oh, wow, this was kinda bad? That's Broly's Second Coming. I love the first Broly movie. The fights, the soundtrack, the pure menace of Broly. It was peak Dragon Ball. But Second Coming? Oh boy, let's just say it was a letdown to say the least. So today I'm taking on a challenge that might be as impossible as stopping Broly himself. Trying to fix Broly Second Coming. We're giving Broly back his terrifying presence, making the fights hit harder, and giving this movie the rewrite it deserves. Now, before we dive in, let me make one thing crystal clear. I'm not claiming to be a better writer than the people who worked on this movie, or, God forbid, Toriyama himself. This video is just a fun, creative exercise where I'll take a shot at reimagining this movie in a way that makes it better for me, and hopefully for some of you too. So with all that said, let's see if I can pull off the impossible. Alright, here's the game plan for this rewrite. My main objective is to make Broly as terrifying and menacing as he was in his first outing. Back then, he was this unstoppable force, this legendary Saiyan who lived up to the hype. In Second Coming though, that menace is all but gone. I also want to keep most of the same characters and plot elements intact. My goal isn't to create a completely different movie, but to fix what's already there. Now, you might be wondering, what don't you like about this movie? Well, after sitting down and rewatching it for this video, about 80% of it just doesn't work. Honestly, I'd go as far as saying the best parts of this movie are the early scenes with Trunks, Goten, and Videl doing, well, whatever they're doing. They're lighthearted, fun, and full of that classic Dragon Ball Z charm that I appreciated as a kid. But then Broly shows up and the movie takes a nosedive. The menace he was is now gone. He barely says anything beyond yelling Kakarot over and over, and even the fights against him feel underwhelming. Then there's the family Kamehameha. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a cool moment. Seeing Goku, Gohan, and Goten all come together is full of hype, but how the movie sets it up is so dumb. It's almost impressive. Let me paint the picture for you. Goten is in the middle of this desperate climactic moment, and he essentially wishes on a single Dragon Ball for Goku to show up. Just one Dragon Ball, and somehow that works? Goku's spirit, or whatever it's supposed to be, just floats down from the heavens like, hey, I'm here to save the day. I have no idea how they got away with that. It feels like the movie just gave up and said, good enough. So with all that being said, let's start fixing this mess. The opening scene of Broly's Second Coming shows us Broly crashing onto Earth in a space pod. And honestly, this is the first time I've even really noticed the pod. He lands, freezes for several years, and that's how he ends up on Earth. It's supposed to set up how Broly got here, but the problem is with the execution. How did Broly even find a space pod in time? And why did he conveniently crash land on Earth? There's no explanation, no logic, it's just boom, Broly's back. It's a little too convenient for my taste. So I'm going to take a swing at fixing that and make it more believable. The rewrite opens a day after the fight with Cell in the vast emptiness of deep space, where Broly drifts in his green energy orb, a parallel to his survival as a baby when he and Paragus escaped planet Vegeta's destruction. He should be dead, anyone else would have been dead. But Broly, he isn't just anyone. Even as his body hovers on the brink of death, something inside him refuses to let go. Then, there it is, a flicker, a faint pulse of ki, weak but still alive. His body, battered and broken, barely clings to existence. But that tiny spark? It's enough. This is where things get interesting. Even in his unconscious state, Broly's instincts take over. He feels something massive, a force unlike anything he's ever sensed before. He doesn't know what it is, but we do. What he's sensing are the lingering echoes of battle, the energy signatures of warriors who had once stood against him. Gohan, Vegeta, Trunks, Piccolo, and especially Goku. All that raw power burned into Earth itself after the fight with Cell. Broly doesn't understand what's pulling him toward it, but in the back of his mind, deep beneath his rage, his broken body, his fading strength, he recognizes it. The last place he felt that much power, the last thing he remembers before he blacked out, Kakarot. Before he can process what's happening, his body reacts on its own. rocketing toward the source of that energy, straight to Earth. It isn't a graceful descent. He careens through the atmosphere, a fiery streak slicing across the night sky before smashing into the icy wastelands of the north, with a force that sends shockwaves through the landscape. The impact alone should have finished him off, but Broly isn't just any Saiyan. He staggers onto his feet, his breath ragged, his body failing him for the first time in his existence. His golden aura flickers, his legendary form hanging by a thread. And then the cold sets in. For the first time in his life, he feels weakness creeping in, his energy siphoned away by the relentless chill. His power slips, dragging him back from the towering heights of his legendary Super Saiyan state to the more unstable form of an ordinary Super Saiyan. But even as the ice and wind threaten to swallow him whole, he refuses to stop. His body may be breaking, but his mind is singular, focused on one thing and one thing only: Kakarot. The name rips from his throat in a final act of defiance before exhaustion takes him. His power gives out entirely, his form collapsing into its base state as his body falls into the frozen water beneath him. The world closes in, the ice hardens, and just like that, Broly, the legendary Super Saiyan, is entombed beneath the surface, his hatred preserved in ice, waiting for the day he would rise again. Boom, title card. I think I did a pretty good job. What I tried to do here was clean up some of the gaps that didn't quite sit right with me while watching. I wanted to piece everything together in a way that made Broly's survival feel more plausible. Why he didn't just die out there in space, and why he just so happened to crash land on Earth. Instead of pure coincidence, it's his own relentless nature, his sheer refusal to die, and the thirst for revenge that drives him straight to the planet. But we're just getting started. 7 years later, we introduce the trio of Goten, Trunks, and Videl. Now, to be completely fair, this part of the movie I kinda liked. It's lighthearted and fun. I also have a lot of nostalgia from these scenes, but let's tighten it up. First off, Videl in the original, she's just tagging along because she wants to see a dragon. Instead, now, let's give her an actual reason to be here. She's a no-nonsense fighter, logical and grounded, so what if she doesn't actually believe in the Dragon Balls? To her, this whole thing sounds like some ridiculous myth, something Gohan's weird family believes in, and she's here to prove it's all nonsense. Goten and Trunks, on the other hand, they're just here for the ride, having the time of their lives. Mostly, they're just here to goof off and see where the adventure takes them. And that adventure leads them to Natade Village. Now, in the original, the villagers are terrified because of some vague monster curse, but that's lazy. Instead, let's make the fear real. When the trio arrives, they don't just hear stories about a monster, they see evidence of it. Destroyed homes, claw marks in the dirt, entire families missing. Whatever's been attacking them isn't just some campfire tale. And then there's Meloja, the so-called shaman who's been taking full advantage of the situation. He's still every bit as sleazy and opportunistic as before, but this time, his fear-mongering actually has weight behind it. The villagers are desperate, and he's using that to maintain control. Now, here's where we drop the first hint of Broly's return. While Trunks and Goten are introducing themselves, Goten playfully zooms into the air, showing off his ability to fly, until suddenly he just stops, mid-air. His whole body locks up, a chill runs down his spine, and it's not from the cold. Someone is sensing his ki. It's faint, distant, buried deep within the mountains, yet undeniably powerful. He lowers himself back down, his expression uneasy. Trunks, did you feel that? Trunks blinks, confused. Feel what? Goten hesitates. If Trunks didn't notice, maybe it was nothing. But before Goten can dwell on it, a villager warns them about a monster lurking in the mountains. The boys exchange a glance. Mystery solved, or so they think. They brush it off, convinced that whatever it is, they can handle it. After all, they're Saiyans. What could possibly be out there that they couldn't beat? And just like that, the shadow of Broly looms over the story, a silent force waiting beneath the ice, waiting for something or someone to wake him up. Now we're cooking. The plan is simple. Lure out the so-called monster with food, ambush it, and free Natate Village from its terror so the gang can get the last Dragon Ball from them. Sounds solid on paper, but when 2/3 of the team consists of notoriously hungry Saiyan kids, things immediately go off the rails. As they crouch behind cover, waiting for their target, Trunks, who has the patience of exactly 0, snatches an apple and takes a bite. Goten, staring at the food like a starving puppy, reaches for his own share, only for Videl to slap his hand away with a sharp insult. Goten whimpers, his lip quivering, eyes welling up with tears. And then, full meltdown, wailing, screaming, the whole 9 yards. Videl, caught between guilt and sheer panic, scrambles to calm him down, her no-nonsense exterior cracking as she shoves a dumpling into his hands. Immediately, the crying stops, replaced by quiet, satisfied munching. Then, Trunks, ever the instigator, leans over and grins. You know he was faking, right? Videl freezes, her expression shifting from relief to slow dawning realization. Goten gives her a cheeky dumpling-filled grin. The sound of her teeth grinding is almost audible. But before she can snap, their monster finally appears. And, surprise, it's just a dinosaur. A big one, sure, but not exactly the nightmare fuel Meloja had hyped up. The battle itself, it's not even a battle. Goten and Trunks toy with it, laughing as they dodge its attacks, while Videl, still fuming over the dumpling incident, vents her frustration with a few well-placed punches of her own. Then, just as Goten prepares to finish it off with a small ki blast, he suddenly tenses. That feeling is back. Someone, something is watching him, locking onto his energy. And this time, it's stronger, still coming from deep within the mountains. He hesitates, eyes flickering toward the distant peaks. Trunks, noticing his hesitation, shrugs and takes out the dinosaur himself. "What's up with you?" he asks. Goten opens his mouth, ready to say something, but then his stomach growls. He grins sheepishly. "I'm hungry." And just like that, the tension vanishes. What follows is Dragon Ball tradition. If it's big and dangerous, it's probably dinner. With the so-called monster problem quite literally taken care of, the village erupts into celebration. A grand feast is held in honor of their newfound safety. Food, laughter, and relief filling the air. Mission accomplished, right? Well, not for Goten. Even as the festivities wind down and the villagers offer them a place to sleep for the night, something keeps nagging at him. Later, as they settle in, he finally speaks up. "Even after we found the monster, I still feel something," he admits. His voice is quieter now, more serious. It's still out there, near the mountains, and it feels like it's only targeting me. Videl and Trunks exchange glances. Trunks scoffs, brushing it off. It's probably nothing. But Goten's expression doesn't change. After a beat, Trunks sighs, relenting. "Fine, if it'll make you feel better, we'll check it out in the morning." Not like there's anything we can't handle. They have no idea what they're about to wake up to. As Goten and Trunks soar through the sky, the crisp mountain air rushing past them, their mood is light, carefree. They chat between bites of leftover dino meat, laughing about how shockingly tasty it was. To them, this is just another adventure, another mystery to solve before summoning the dragon. But beneath the frozen wasteland below, something stirs. A shift, a crack, barely noticeable, but there. Deep within the ice, where time itself has stood still, Broly's unconscious mind begins to react. That energy, faint at first, is growing stronger, drawing closer. His frozen body, locked in a slumber for 7 years, trembles as something within him sparks awake. He feels it, not just any power, Saiyan power, Goku's bloodline. Then it happens. Memories, fragments, come rushing back. A battle that should have ended with his victory. A name that haunts him, fuels him, taunts him, a humiliation he will never accept. How could he, the legendary Super Saiyan, have been defeated? How could a low-class warrior like Kakarot, a Saiyan so beneath him, have bested him? The thought alone is unbearable. He doesn't need to understand it. He doesn't need to think. His body knows what to do. His rage knows where to go. And soon, the ice that has held him captive will shatter. Broly will rise again. A slow, rumbling growl escapes from his throat. his fingers twitching against the frost. The cracks widen. The air hums with a dormant, primal rage reigniting after years of forced hibernation. And then the ice shatters. A pulse of raw, malevolent energy rips through the mountains, sending a shockwave across the frozen wasteland. In an instant, Goten freezes mid-flight, his breath hitching, his skin prickles, every hair standing on end. Whatever he's feeling, it's not just strong, it's targeting him. The sky is barely day when Videl wakes up. The distant sound of something echoing through the mountains. It's not thunder, but it has that same deep rolling intensity. Frowning, she quietly slips away, soaring into the sky to investigate. She doesn't know what she expects to find. A storm? An avalanche? Maybe some leftover debris from their battle with the dinosaur? But when she reaches the lake, she finds something else entirely. The ice is broken. Jagged shards float atop the water, steam rising from where the frost had once been. And in the center, standing amidst the wreckage of his former prison, is a figure. At first, she thinks it's a man, a huge, impossibly muscular man. His breathing is heavy, his chest rising and falling like he's been running for hours. His hair glows with an eerie golden light, the energy around him crackling like static electricity. And then he moves. Videl barely has time to react before his head snaps up, eyes locking onto hers. And in that moment, something cold wraps around her spine, a primal instinct screaming at her to run. Broly is awake, and he's not happy. Now we're talking. No dumb crying-induced revival. Instead, we establish his return as something inevitable. It's not about recognizing a baby's cries, it's about recognizing Kakarot's bloodline. And I wanted to make when he finally wakes up an event, something far bigger than any of them could have prepared for. Videl hovers in the air, eyes locked onto Broly, her body tense. She's faced tough opponents before. She's trained with Gohan and fought against hardened criminals. But this is something else entirely. There's something wrong about the way Broly stands there, shoulders rising and falling with each breath. His golden aura flickering like a flame that refuses to go out. She clenches her fists. She's not backing down. Broly tilts his head, studying her. Not out of curiosity, not out of respect. He's confused. There's no recognition, no flicker of acknowledgement. To him, she isn't a warrior. She isn't a threat. She's nothing. And then he moves. It's fast, too fast. 1 second, he's standing by the shattered ice. The next, he's in front of her, fist clenched. She barely has time to react before a monstrous shockwave sends her flying, crashing into the side of a cliff with a force that rattles the mountain. The impact almost kills her, her vision swimming. She tries to get up, but before she can even push herself off the ground, he's there again. This time, Goten and Trunks hurries after her, horrified at what they've just witnessed. They call out to her, but Broly's head snaps in their direction, his body going rigid, and then he sees Goten. For a moment, there's nothing, just silence. Then his breathing quickens, his eyes widen, and something deep inside him snaps. This is where the energy he was feeling this whole time was coming from, and he looks exactly like Goku. Kakarot! Broly's voice booms, raw with hatred. But then a sinister grin spreads across his face as realization sinks in. No, you must be his brat. The earth quakes beneath them, the very ground shuddering as Broly's energy surges outward, flooding every muscle in his body. He grits his teeth, fists clenched tight. I will make you suffer for his sins. Goten doesn't understand what's happening. Broly lunges. Goten barely dodges in time, his tiny body moving on instinct. But Broly is relentless. His movements are erratic, wild, like a force of pure destruction that has no control over itself. Every punch, every kick, devastating. Goten and Trunks try to fight back, landing blows that should at least do something, but Broly doesn't even flinch. He's not just taking their attacks, he's enjoying them. Pathetic, Broly growls, swatting Goten aside like he's nothing more than an insect. You think you can stop me? His next punch sends Trunks flying into a nearby rock, leaving a crater in his wake. You're all just toys for me to break. The battle becomes a blur, a massacre in slow motion. Goten is sent skidding across the ground, his breath ragged, blood dripping from his lip. Trunks barely manages to keep his footing, his body shaking from the toll of each hit he takes. But he's losing ground, fast. Then Goten spots it, just a glimpse in the distance, the Dragon Ball. His heart leaps. If we can just summon Shenron, maybe just maybe, they can turn the tide. They can win. He knows it's a slim chance, but it's the only one they've got. Trunks sees Goten's shift in focus, his eyes widening as he realizes what's going through his mind. Without hesitation, he throws himself back into the fray, landing an all-out barrage of punches, trying to buy Goten time. There's no mooning, no flashy taunts, just a kid fighting for his life. But disaster strikes. Just as Goten makes a desperate dive for the Dragon Ball, his foot slips on the loose dirt beneath him. His fingers graze the sphere, but instead of seizing it, it tumbles from his grip. It rolls down a small slope, vanishing into a dark cavern below, surrounded by hundreds of glimmering, crystal-like stones. Goten's heart sinks. The world feels like it's closing in around him. There's no time to search. Trunks is already gasping for breath, his energy waning, and Broly, he isn't even breathing hard. His power is rising. We're gonna die, aren't we? Goten whispers, his voice shaky as he stares at Trunks, barely able to hide the fear in his eyes. Trunks' face pales, but he doesn't flinch. I don't know, but I'm not giving up yet. His voice cracks, a mix of defiance and the growing weight of reality. Broly laughs, a low, menacing sound that echoes through the air. You think you can fight me? He sneers, talking toward them like a predator cornering its prey. You don't even know what pain is. He raises his fist and the ground shakes beneath them. The sky itself seems to tremble in fear. Goten and Trunks share a glance. This is it. This is where they fall. The battle rages on, but every breath they take feels heavier, as if the very air is trying to suffocate them. Then, just as Broly is about to finish them off, a golden blur slams into him, sending him skidding backward. Gohan has arrived. Goten and Trunks, gasping for breath, look up in relief as Gohan lands in front of them, eyes blazing with fury. He turns to them, quickly assessing the damage before his gaze shifts toward Broly. He knows that energy. He knows that face. No way. The realization hits. This is the same monster they fought 7 years ago. The same legendary Super Saiyan that took everything they had to defeat. The same force of destruction that should have died in deep space. And somehow, he's back. Broly grins, his eyes flickering with recognition. Look at this. Kakarot's brat is all grown up. The ground shatters beneath his feet as he steps forward, the sheer pressure of his presence making the air feel heavy. Tell me, boy, did you think you'd never see me again? Broly sneers, his teeth bared. Did you think your father actually killed me? Gohan doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. His stance tightens, his fists clench, and his aura flares like a roaring fire. Broly lets out a cruel chuckle. You always were the quiet one. His expression hardens, his eyes narrowing. Good, that means you'll scream louder when I break you. Gohan braces himself, meeting Broly's charge head-on. The collision sends shockwaves tearing through the battlefield. Unlike Goten and Trunks, Gohan is a fully trained warrior, stronger than he was 7 years ago. And this time, he's not holding back. The two clash in a blur of movement, neither giving an inch. For the first time since waking up, Broly isn't toying with his opponent, he's actually fighting. But then Videl, weakened but still standing, she stumbles onto the battlefield, just in time to see the fight escalate into the sky. She watches as Broly suddenly shifts his attention not toward Gohan, not toward the battle, but toward Goten, Trunks, and her. And then, without warning, he hurls a massive energy blast directly at them. It happens in an instant. Gohan, moving on pure instinct, throws himself in front of the attack. The explosion is disastrous. When the dust clears, Gohan stands breathing heavily, shielding the others with his body. But the damage is done. Goten, Trunks, and Videl are badly hurt. The cliff they were standing on is now nothing more than rubble, and worst of all, Broly is still standing, grinning. Gohan clenches his fists, his rage boiling over. The sight of his friends, his family, lying there, struggling to even move, something snaps inside him. A surge of energy explodes around Gohan, the air crackling with golden lightning as his aura flares to life. His hair deepens to a richer gold, and his eyes sharpen, his expression hardening with purpose. The very ground beneath them trembles as if the world itself recognizes what's happening. It's been years since Gohan has had to push himself this far, since the Cell games to be exact. This is Super Saiyan 2, and for the first time, Broly feels the true weight of a challenge. Gohan, with a focused intensity, begins to push Broly back. Broly, once unstoppable, is finally starting to struggle. He's not used to an opponent who can match him, let alone make him feel pressure. Gohan's attacks come faster, sharper, and more precise than before. Gone is the hesitation, the uncertainty he once felt in his battle with Cell. This is Gohan at his peak, a force of nature, his fists crashing against Broly with the unstoppable force of a storm that refuses to die out. But then, Broly smiles. A low, menacing chuckle rumbles in his throat, his lips curling into a grin that should not exist. This is Broly at his most terrifying, not just because of his power, but because of what that grin means. He's enjoying this. The air distorts around him as his muscles pulse with raw energy, his body trembling from the sheer force contained within it. His aura shifts, no longer the golden hue of a Super Saiyan, but something monstrous. His body expands, his muscles stretching and growing, his veins bulging as the power he had been holding back is finally unleashed. And then, with an explosion of energy that shakes the entire battlefield, Broly ascends. The legendary Super Saiyan has returned. Gohan barely has time to react before a fist slams into his stomach, folding him in half. His vision blurs, his breath stolen from his lungs as he's launched backward, crashing into a mountainside with enough force to collapse it. Broly doesn't follow. He just stands there, watching, waiting, letting Gohan process the difference in power. For the first time in the fight, Gohan feels the gap in power. He's outmatched. Gohan staggers to his feet, wiping the blood from his mouth. His muscles ache. His energy is draining, but he refuses to go down like this. He won't let this monster destroy everything. He takes off, flying high above the battlefield, baiting Broly into a chase. The massive Saiyan follows, unbothered, his grin never fading. Gohan pushes himself to his limit, leading Broly toward the molten pit left by one of Broly's own attacks. A bubbling sea of lava ready to consume anything that falls into it. And then, the opening. At the last second, Gohan stops midair, spinning around with a burst of speed, and drives his knee directly into Broly's jaw. Broly staggers from the force of the attack, the impact stunning him just long enough for Gohan to land another blow, sending him crashing down. The molten lava swallows him whole, the ground quaking as his body sinks into the bubbling abyss. A moment passes, then another, and then silence. Gohan lets out a breath, his body screaming in exhaustion. It's over. He actually won. However, as soon as he got comfortable, a pillar of energy erupts from the lava, a green explosion ripping through the sky as Broly rises from the pit, his body coated in a protective energy shield, completely untouched. Gohan stares, his heart sinking. Broly laughs. Without hesitation, he thrusts a hand forward, a blast of pure rage launching from his palm, slamming into Gohan before he can even react. Everything goes white. In the original movie, this is where Krillin randomly shows up in a Namekian outfit for no apparent reason, gets one-shotted, and pretty much doesn't contribute to the plot at all. I still want to include him in this story since I need to use all the characters from the original film, but I definitely want to do it in a way that feels more meaningful. Gohan is barely conscious, barely able to move. As Broly advances, he's walking forward, taking his time, savoring the moment as he grabs Gohan by the throat and lifts him into the air. Gohan struggles, kicking, clawing at Broly's grip, but it's no use. The pressure tightens, his vision blurs, his body is failing him. He can feel the life being crushed out of him. Just before everything fades to black, Goten and Trunks deliver a powerful kick to Broly, sending him sprawling and freeing Gohan in the process. To Gohan's surprise, Goten and Trunks are completely energized and fully restored. Confused, Gohan looks around until his eyes land on Krillin holding a bag of senzu beans. "Krillin, am I glad to see you?" Gohan exclaims. While Goten and Trunks keep Broly busy, Krillin rushes over and hands Gohan a Senzu Bean. I could feel you and Broly's energy spreading across the planet, Krillin explains. I had to grab the beans and make sure everyone was alright. Just as Gohan eats the bean, Goten and Trunks are thrown over by Gohan. Gohan, fully replenished, roars, summoning every ounce of his strength. That's enough, Gohan yells, his voice echoing through the battlefield. Broly grins, amused. Gohan clenches his fists. His aura explodes around him, his energy surging higher than before. He's not just fighting to survive anymore, he's fighting to end this. Fine, his voice is steel. Then I'll finish this myself. The roar, he launches a Super Kamehameha, a blast so massive it shakes the heavens. Broly barely reacts, smirking as he throws his Omega Blaster in retaliation. The two attacks collide in a brilliant explosion of light, locking in a deadly struggle. Goten and Trunks begin to surge with energy, their patience with Broly finally running out. Without a word, they stand side by side with Gohan. In an instant, they power up to Super Saiyan and launch their own blasts in the chaotic struggle. The tide of battle shifts. The balance starts to change. For a while, Broly's attack falters. Gohan, Goten, and Trunks stand shoulder to shoulder, pouring every ounce of energy they have into their combined blast. A beam of pure blue fire surges toward Broly's Omega Blaster, and the two attacks collide with a thunderous force, shaking the entire battlefield. But Broly is still winning. His monstrous energy bomb pushes forward, inch by inch, the overwhelming pressure forcing Goten, Trunks, and Gohan to grit their teeth, desperation clawing at them. Gohan plants his feet firmly, screaming through clenched teeth. His muscles scream in protest as his energy fades. He steals a glance at Goten, his little brother's face twisted in fear yet determined, pushing with everything he's got, and it's still not enough. And then Broly laughs. The sound is cruel and mocking, effortlessly escaping his lips. He's toying with them. Despite everything they've thrown at him, all their efforts, he's still stronger. Then, in the midst of their struggle, a familiar voice echoes through their minds, like a beacon cutting through the chaos. Gohan, Goten, Trunks, it's me, Goku. The voice is clear and strong, coming through King Kai's communication link. Gohan's heart skips a beat. Hearing his father's voice at a time like this, he's not sure how, but he knows the moment he hears Goku's voice, they're not alone. Dad, Goten gasps, his voice tinged with disbelief. Goku's voice is filled with unwavering conviction. Listen to me, all of you. Gohan, when you push yourself beyond your limits, you're the strongest in the universe. You've proven it before, and you can do it again. This battle isn't over, and neither are you. Gohan's breath catches as he remembers the Cell Games, the moment when he pushed past every limit he thought he had, when he reached a power that shook the very foundations of his being. He was unstoppable then, and he can be unstoppable now. Then, Goku's voice shifts, turning to Goten and Trunks. And you, Goten, Goku's voice softens, but there's a quiet urgency. I know we've never met, Goten, and you don't really know me yet, but already, I can see it. You're so much stronger than I was at your age. I can feel it. I don't even need to be there to know. I'm proud of you already. Goten's eyes widen, his heart pounding in his chest. Goku, his dad, is proud of him. It's the first time he's heard those words. I need you to use that strength now, Goten. Goku continues, his tone turning serious. You've got what it takes. Protect this world, protect your mom, save them for me. Right now, I need you to give everything you've got. You can do it, son. And Trunks, Goku continues, his tone filled with pride. You're the son of Vegeta, the prince of all Saiyans. You've got that Saiyan pride running through your veins. Never forget it. Your father's strength is inside you. You can make him proud. You have the power to stand beside the best. Don't back down now. Trunks swallows hard, feeling the weight of his father's legacy settle on his shoulders. Vegeta's strength, his pride, it all flows through him. He's not just fighting for his life anymore. He's fighting for everything his father stood for. I'm ready, Trunks yells, his voice fierce with new conviction. Gohan's eyes focused, his resolve hardening like steel. He turns to face Goten and Trunks, their expressions filled with renewed determination. He can feel it, their power, their will, rising like a wave. They're not backing down, they're going to win. You heard him, Gohan says, his voice steady, yet filled with unwavering conviction. Goku's right. We have to give everything we've got, and then some. Just like I did against Cell. Dig deep, deeper than you think you can. Now, we push past everything we have left. Goten and Trunks nod, their faces set with unrelenting focus. With a deep breath, Gohan powers up, his aura exploding with blinding intensity. "Let's show Broly what we're made of," he says, his voice a roar that rings through the battlefield. The three of them, side by side, pour every ounce of their energy into the struggle. Broly snarls, his aura exploding, his muscles tightening as he fires more blasts into his own attack, forcing it forward once more. The brothers strain, sweat dripping down their faces. The force is unbearable. But then Broly senses a new energy flaring up behind him. It's Krillin. He's been charging up multiple Destructo discs. With a quick motion, he hurls them at Broly. Most of Broly's energy is focused on his own attack, leaving him vulnerable. He tries to dodge, but the first disc grazes his shoulder. The second carves through his thigh, and another slashes across his arm, drawing blood. It's not the pain that unsettles him, it's the break in his concentration. For the second time, his Omega Blaster flickers, its momentum faltering. Gohan, Goten, and Trunks feel it immediately. The shift, the hesitation. They seize the moment. "Now!" Gohan roars. With every ounce of power they have left, they push forward, their combined blast swelling in size, burning brighter, its force doubling, tripling. The balance of the struggle tips. Broly's attack is no longer advancing. It's being pushed back. Broly grits his teeth, eyes wide. No, this isn't happening. He digs his heels into the ground, pouring more energy into his attack, trying to force it forward, but it's too late. His momentary distraction, the slashes from Krillin's attack, the sheer force of Gohan, Goten, and Trunks, it all comes crashing down on him. The massive green sphere of his own energy begins to crack, and then something strange happens. His smile, his ever-present bloodthirsty grin, fades. A different feeling creeps into his chest, one he barely recognizes. His breath catches. His muscles tense, not in rage, but in something else entirely. He remembers. It's the same sensation that overtook him 7 years ago, when Kakarot, no, that low-class worm, stood against him. When he felt his power slipping, when he was sent hurtling into the abyss of space, defeated. The feeling of losing. The feeling of fear. His body trembles. He hates this feeling. It's foreign. It is wrong. He's the legendary Super Saiyan. He does not feel fear. He does not lose. But as his arms weaken, as his energy shatters around him, he realizes the truth. It's happening again. With a final desperate roar, he lunges forward, trying to stop the inevitable. But the wave of energy surges, swallowing him whole. It lifts him into the sky, his body convulsing against the overwhelming force. His armor shatters. His muscles strain and bulge with defiance. But it's useless. The last thing he sees is the face of Goku, not as a ghost, not as some last-minute save, but through Goten and Gohan, and with one final, desperate, hate-filled scream, "Kakarot!" He is consumed. The energy hurtles him into the sun, his body disintegrating in the inferno, his legendary power finally, permanently erased from existence. The battlefield is eerily quiet. The sky is clear. The storm has passed. Gohan stumbles forward, his legs nearly giving out. The weight of the battle settles in. Trunks is gasping for breath, his arms shaking. He glances at Goten, who is still staring at the spot where Broly once stood. "He's really gone," Goten whispers. Trunks swallows hard, his voice quieter than usual. "We actually did it." He sounds like he's trying to convince himself. Gohan kneels beside them, placing a hand on both their shoulders. "Yeah," he breathes. "You both did good." For a long moment, they say nothing. Then, Goten looks up, his voice soft. "Do you think Dad saw us?" Gohan exhales, offering the faintest of smiles. "I know he did." The camera pans up to the sky, fading to black. Overall, the reason I chose Broly Second Coming as my first rewrite was because of how much I love the original Broly movie. I have so much nostalgia for it, the action, the soundtrack, and the whole vibe of it. It's a film I can watch over and over, but Second Coming always felt like a bit of a letdown to me. Broly wasn't treated with the same respect he deserved, especially after how powerful and menacing he was in the first movie. And that's something I really wanted to change with this rewrite. I hope you enjoyed the changes I made, but even if you didn't, I at least hope you were entertained. Now, as for that beam clash at the end, it's clear that the inspiration comes from the Cell Saga, and I didn't shy away from that. I fully embraced it. The Cell Saga's final beam struggle is iconic, and it felt like the perfect fit for the moment. I made sure Goku played a part since I wanted to include all the characters, but I also wanted to give Gohan a special character moment. Just like how Goku encouraged Gohan in the original Beam Clash, I wanted Gohan to pass that encouragement down to Goten and Trunks. This was their moment to rise up and face Broly, and I felt it was important for Gohan to be the one to push them forward, just as Goku did for him all those years ago. So with that, I think I've managed to take a crack at making Broly's Second Coming a little more in line with what I think it could have been. Maybe it's a perfect fix, maybe it's not. But either way, I hope it was an enjoyable ride. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and remember, sometimes the impossible is just an opportunity to try something new.